Video games, an art form that allows us to try out all sorts of professions before we commit for realsies. Overcooked lets you have a go at running a commercial kitchen without the hassle of daily insurance claims for kitchen fires. Uncharted lets you try out being an international treasure thief without having to worry about all the internal injuries and what I'm sure would be an ongoing international manhunt for all the archaeological theft and literally thousands of murders.
How many men have you killed? How many just today?
Come on.
And Skyrim lets you try out being a wizard without the hazard of potentially burning off your fingers. But there's one profession that video games seem to be particularly obsessed with, and that's detective work. And it's great to be able to try this out virtually because I'm not sure my social anxiety could handle all the cold calling and door knocking and aggressive confrontations with criminals.
Down the road! Down the road! Come on!
And so in order to pay tribute to detective games big and small, I've done two things. Number one, I tried to get a big bushy detective moustache and got this instead. My wife is thrilled. And number two, for the past couple of months, I've been playing a whole pile of detective/investigative games to see if I've got what it takes to solve some very serious and some not so serious crimes. Tried my hand at being a lawyer as well. So let's dust for prints, drink a shit ton of whiskey, and drive really, really badly as we dive into the world of detective games. So I guess Rockstar wasn't content with the success of making the world's best ping pong game. They've also made some other titles apparently, but I'm not really familiar with those. They decided to give a bunch of Australian hooligans a whole pile of money to make what is essentially a very fancy point and click adventure game with some spooky space age facial animation that leads to some very subtle acting. I think this guy might be lying. In terms of making you feel like you're doing real detective-y stuff, this one kind of hits that out of the park. I love the dramatic title cards for the start of each case and the guy's gravelly voice. You didn't know it then, but this was the case that was gonna break everything open for you. But what do you actually do in L.A. Noire? Well, you've punched a lot of people in the face. Basic but brutal gunplay. Careful with these hostages.
You disappoint me, Coldfeld.
And I actually also really like the foot chases in this game. The controls for them are really basic, but they do a great job of making these look cinematic and making you feel like you're playing through a 1940s, 50s cop noir movie. But the thing that really sets L.A. Noire apart from all the other stock open world games that were coming out at the same time that this did is the crime solving. This breaks down into a few different areas. You'll be solving a lot of puzzles, picking up every item in the environment to look for clues. One of these days I'm gonna pick up a bottle and Cole isn't gonna say, I don't think so.
Optimistic, Cole.
I love all the little details with this stuff. Like every time you find a new clue, Cole jots it down in his meticulously handwritten notebook. And it's from this notebook that you choose your questions in what is really still the highlight for this game, the interviews. Thanks to some pretty nifty facial capture technology, you're not only using clues to try to catch out the people that you're interviewing, but also their extremely subtle facial expressions. Some of these actors actually do a really good job being subtle with this stuff, and some of them you'll need to use the evidence in your notebook and the reactions of people to carefully choose your next line of questioning.
You're lying about the photograph, Mrs. Black.
You're incredibly rude and insensitive.
Well, shit.
If you stuff up like I did here, there's usually another way that you can still progress the case. This guy didn't answer the questions I needed him to answer, so we followed him to his apartment instead to find the location of our missing perp. Perp and clam up and line of questioning. I'm gonna use a lot of lingo in this video because it makes me feel real detective-y.
What a loser.
Given that there's so many different ways that you can generally get to the end of a case, I think it would have been nicer if they didn't expose to you straight away whether you got a line of questioning right or wrong. I think it would have been cool just to let it flow naturally. And it is a nitpick because L.A. Noire is fucking great if you ask me. The recreation of golden era Los Angeles is spectacular as well. There isn't a ton to do in this open world, but it's really not trying to be that kind of game. I will say things get really, really silly towards the end, including using a flamethrower in a sewer. But how well will L.A. Noire prepare you for the rigors of real detective work? I don't know, I'm not a detective. I'm guessing that the antiquated setting doesn't help with modern day crime solving much. Also, I don't think you're allowed to drive like this in real life, no matter how high your rank is. I don't know, if you're a real cop, let me know. The one thing I do think L.A. Noire is good training ground for is sucking your way up to get to the top. It turns out our main character Cole is a total piece of shit. And once you get a few hours into the game, you start to realize that he cares way more about solving these crimes so that he can climb the ladder than he cares about any sense of achieving justice. But I don't know, what are you gonna do? The man gotta eat. I guess if you're wanting to be ethical and pursue justice and avoid corruption,
So bored.
maybe LNY isn't the best template for you. But if you want to solve a shit ton of fun puzzles, examine crime scenes, explore a beautifully recreated version of Los Angeles, and most importantly, get all that money and get all those suits, then LNY is the game for you. But what if you want to play as a character that's a bit more like, me? I'm actually going to be completely 100% sincere here for a second. Just give me a sec. Okay, Disco Elysium means a lot to me. I think it's really cool to see a video game talking about things like depression and anxiety and self-loathing. To me, that's one of the coolest things about this entire medium, that we can have those discussions, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Disco Elysium is essentially a game about the relationship you have with yourself and relationships with other people. Figuring out who you want to be, what you actually are, and coming to terms with that.
I'm me.
It's kind of hard to describe unless you experience Disco Elysium for yourself, but these moments where you have an internal conversation with yourself while also having a conversation with someone else, bouncing ideas off different parts of your psyche, it's fucking crazy. I know that drunken detectives are a bit of a cliche in fiction, but they use that trope so effectively in this game to tell the story. You are such a blackout, self-destructive drunk that you basically spend the first few days of in-game time trying to figure out what the fuck you did last night. You realize that the car crash you've been investigating is your own car crash. You just don't remember driving your car into the sea.
Did I drive last night?
Tied into this absolute train wreck of a main character is the relationship you have with your partner Kim, which is just one of the most fantastic video game companion relationships I've ever seen. At the start of the game, he sees you as a total mess, an alcoholic, pill-addled nightmare, which, to be fair, I was, and so was the main character. And then by the end of the game, he'd grown to respect my weird, insane methods, like patting the mailbox and telling it was doing a good job.
I'm a pretty normal guy.
Although given how flexible this game is, I'm sure you can get to the end and have him totally hate your guts. I really love the overall story in this game. It twists and turns all over the place. There's this really magical moment where you find out how this guy really died, what it means. And it's one of those rare moments in games where all the hair stands up on the back of your neck and you go, oh shit.
We're through the looking glass here, people.
What starts out as an apparent simple hanging spirals out into something much bigger, darker, more complex, even romantic at times. Careful getting beguiled.
You're trying to seduce me.
And this is all just like character story stuff I've talked about so far. Disco Elysium functions really, really well as a good detective video game. The crime scene examination stuff is awesome. You get to use your detective skills to figure out if a bullet went through this window or it was your shoe from the previous evening.
How embarrassing.
The whole time you're examining the scenes, you're having this back and forth conversation with different parts of your own personality to figure out what happened. There's so many different ways to navigate through this game as well. On my first playthrough, I died here and had to find a completely different solution to get to the end game. Whereas on my second playthrough, I was able to talk my way through this conflict. And you often come across these situations that act like skill checks in a traditional RPG. Are you enough of a dick to be mean to this person?
Nope.
Are you wearing the right pair of pants to convince someone you possess a certain set of beliefs?
Yep.
Failing checks can sometimes lead to really hilarious results, like getting a game over because your morale got too low and now you sit under a bridge throwing excrement at strangers. Or this other one, I had a heart attack and my colleague said I was the heaviest drinker he'd ever seen, and that ain't easy on the old ticker. Here's my hot tip for passing some of the harder skill checks though. Quick save, load, try it, fail. Quick save, load, try it. Quick save, no wait, don't do that. This way lies madness.
I'm going nuts.
There's also a flip side to that coin as well, like sometimes where you know you can't take another hit to your morale because you're going to get a game over. A really hard check comes up and you go, and then you pass it and it feels amazing. I also love the way Disco Elysium looks. This painted style is fantastic. All the interiors look like these little dioramas. I like all the little character portraits. Highly detailed environments to explore. The world is fascinating. Most of all though, I just love this main character. By the time you get to the end of the game, you feel so connected with him. And for me anyway, I just wanted him to have a chance to find some happiness. I never could figure out how to convince this lady to go on a date with him. You know, the one that says we should have a funeral for his car. car.
Where's your car, dude?
Someone let me know in the comments if you were able to take her on the drunken date. In terms of realistic detective work, I hope this isn't how detectives operate.
Well done.
But Disco Elysium comes very, very goddamn highly recommended from me. Just for the wealth of amazing character moments built into this thing. Like when you decide to shave and then the guy looks in the mirror for ages trying to figure out if it was the right decision or not. Now your chin is cold, you fool. Call of Cthulhu? Yes?
Cthulhu.
Yes. This game starts really strongly. Doesn't stay that way. But let's focus on the good stuff for now. Once again, we're a drunken detective. I'm realizing this is absolutely my favorite kind of fictional character. Anyway, we're washed up, we're alcoholic, we're passed out on our desk after 19 glasses of whiskey. This time around, we get tasked with investigating a mysterious house fire and the death of the occupants. I love your PI office at the start and you can roll around and investigate your old case files. The ship rolling in through the fog and then you get the title card. It's good shit. And the people on this little mysterious island generally have kind of interesting things to say. Never mind the mixed voice acting.
I've been hearing about you a lot lately. You seem to enjoy causing trouble.
Nice job.
We are talking about detective games today, and I do think that Cthulhu does that stuff quite well. Each crime scene you enter has lots of clues to find. There's this cool mechanic where you can reconstruct events, and often what you can discover is based on the way you've spec'd your character. If you've invested enough in your investigation skill, you can pick more locks, get into different rooms.
Here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
It's pretty groovy that there's different ways to get through each scenario based on how you've skilled up your character. That's kind of all the good things I have to say about Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, that's too bad. What a shame.
Yeah, it is. It's a damn shame.
A lot of these crime scenes and detective stuff sit in amongst really, really painful garbage. So here's the thing. I know that I should have known this going in, looking at the title of the game, but at some point, Call of Cthulhu basically just abandons being a detective game and turns 100% into a weird horror first-person, slowly walk around avoiding monsters and enemies shtick.
You ruined it.
The first warning sign was this section here. It sucks. There's this monster that one hit kills you. 34 different knives around this room. You have to get one of them, stab this painting, but the game doesn't tell you which knife is the right knife. So I basically ran around this room, picked up a knife, went to the painting, didn't work, got killed, did it again, did it again, did it again, did it again.
I don't like it.
Towards what I thought was the end of the game, I team up with the lady I've been searching for, beat the bad guy. It cuts to us at the grave of her son, and I thought, oh, this is it's a nice ending. It's a good little game. The lady then says to me, I have to go back. I have to deal with the shambler, which is this dude from earlier. And I thought, no, we were done here. And then the local cops arrest me and we suddenly launch into this new corruption/cult storyline. And I was like, we were done here. And then they introduce a new mechanic where suddenly we can go into the mind's eye of all these different people and we're still not done. There were many hours to go. And then right near the very end, this lady has the fucking audacity to say, I'm not going to let you finish this game by giving you the information you need. You need to go get me a first aid kit first. So this game is way too long. Even though we weigh a lot of value in terms of gameplay hours versus money investment, I genuinely think I would have been way happier to purchase this game and it be 4 to 5 hours long. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is gameplay. Not the detective stuff. Absolutely the best parts of this game are the parts where you're examining crime scenes. Let's talk about stealth. I cannot stand forced stealth, especially forced stealth where they don't give you an option to defend yourself. Like you can sneak up behind an enemy, they don't even give you an option to knock them out. Call of Cthulhu is actually... No! 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 Where are you throwing me? Just 1 second. Don't like forced stealth So you get near the end of the game and you get a gun. I thought this is cool. This is a good way to do a little power fantasy at the end of the game. I've been really powerless for all of the combat encounters, and because it felt that way, I just started shooting everyone. And then I ran out of ammo while there were still lots of enemies everywhere. And then I had to go back to sneaking around again.
Shit.
By the time we finally mercifully reach the actual ending of this game, things have gone completely off the rails. I kept expecting all of this madness to cohere into something meaningful. Instead, it just kind of turns into a big mess. I found myself lamenting the fact that at the start of it, we were this cool private detective investigating an interesting case. And by the end of it, I'm a cult leader and the world is ending.
That really got out of hand fast.
Call of Cthulhu is kind of a bummer. It starts really strong and then just turns into something else completely. That's probably not going to help you much with a detective career either, unless you're planning to transition from a drunken PI to the world-ending cult leader. I will say though, I didn't scare easily, and this jump scare right here made me fall the fuck out of my chair.
No other taste.
Of course, it would be remiss of me to talk about detective games without talking about The Detective, and there's a ton of Sherlock Holmes games you can get your hands on. Crimes and Punishments is pretty good. I love the Riddle on the Rails case. The story about this supposedly vanishing train is really spooky. And the way they use Dutch angles and creepy music is super effective.
But, Holmes, the headlight. It's faded away.
But my favorite out of the Holmes-averse has always been Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper. Or at least it was until I replayed it for this video. Good stuff first. Anytime that you're intertwining real historical events into my video game, I'm here for it. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I'm a pretty big and in particular, I'm a big history nerd. And even more in particular, I'm a big Sherlock Holmes nerd. So combining the story of one of history's most infamous serial killers with the most famous fictional detective of all time goes on page 1 of my cookbook of how to make something awesome.
So good.
The use of real places and dates and news reports of witness testimony from the time that are actually accurate to what really happened adds some extra weight to this thing. It gets a little weird at times because these were real crimes and the details that they show you are pretty graphic. They use realistic images for the not so upsetting stuff, and then for the bits that would be really full on, they use this cartoon style.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
But the absolute best thing about this game is the deduction. Whenever you examine a crime scene or a victim or talk to people, all these different clues get added to your deduction boards, and then it's up to you to put those pieces together and link them to figure out what happened.
Oh shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper.
It's the main thing that, in my opinion, really separates Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper from a lot of other detective style games. Rather than just progressing through the story, the game says to you, no, you have to figure out what happened before you can move on. It's actually up to you to solve the crime based on the clues you find and how you put that all together. And it's not just the deduction boards where they do this as well. You have to figure out timelines and use people's statements to figure out movements. These crime scene deductions also lead to these really fantastic reenactments where Holmes is basically killing Watson.
I poisoned you.
It seems like exactly the weird, eccentric shit that Sherlock Holmes would do. And it also highlights the weird, toxic relationship between these two. Like, I get the feeling this is what Holmes has always wanted to do with Watson.
So you see, Watson, the advantage of my unique powers of observation.
Maybe this is also what Watson has wanted all along.
But,
So the crime-solving stuff, the deduction stuff, the weird dynamic between these two, this is all really entertaining. However, I think this is all the stuff that I'd remembered because this game should have actually been called Sherlock Holmes and the Endless List of Favors. Let me explain. What this game actually is about 45 minutes of the most amazing deductive crime solving hidden inside 8 hours of the most mundane fetch questy bullshit I've ever seen. This game starts not with you examining the first crime scene of Jack the Ripper, but instead going on a fetch quest to get this cop's evidence bag, except you can't get the evidence bag until you look after this guy that needs a boarding house, except you can't go to the boarding house because he's unwell, so you need to get him some medicine in order for him to be able to go to the boarding house. So you get him the medicine, and then you take him to the boarding house, and then the guy at the boarding house gives you the bag, and then you take the bag back to the police station, but then he says, I can't talk to you about that yet because because my bag is locked. You need to do this puzzle for me to open my own bag.
Fun.
That's pretty much how 90% of this game plays out. Watson has to go and fix this guy's cane so he can get some information for some reason. Motherfucker, I'm Sherlock Holmes' messenger boy, not a goddamn cane repair guy. And then at the end of repairing his cane, this guy still won't give us the information anyway because he wants another favor done. The crime scene investigation stuff in this game is so good that you're just desperately trying to get to the next point in the story where the next murder happens. So you wander around aimlessly trying to find the right person who will fulfill the favor that you need fulfilled, rubbing objects from your inventory onto random objects in the environment, desperately hoping that something will work. There's so much busy work. Why do I need to build this ladder? Just give me the ladder.
Why are you the way that you are?
You'll also find yourself wrangling snakes, fixing gas leaks for some reason, tidying up this guy's bookstore. Like, do your fucking job, dude. This is objectively ridiculous. There's also a lot of that classic adventure game logic built in here. I couldn't get this door to open, and then eventually Holmes was like, oh, I'll slide this piece of tarpaulin in between the lock and the door opens.
Incredible.
What the fuck are you talking about? The story also gets really silly, and especially considering that this is based on a real story about real victims, it's kind of weird when you take that and turn it into this story about organ trafficking and cult rituals and sicking a cat onto this lady with perfume to get the police out of the station. What is going on?
Doesn't make any sense.
Having said all of that, if you have endless amounts of time, it's almost worth wading through all of this bullshit because the investigative parts in this game are so fucking good. Plus, it's always fun just to see Holmes bagging on Watson.
We haven't done a thing for the past week.
You're the one not doing anything, Watson. For my part, I have been working, tried to gain a bit of perspective.
Wow.
But what if I don't want to be a detective? What if I want to just act like one and probably lose my lawyer job? But guys, the police in the Ace Attorney universe are absolutely hopeless, and if Mr. Legal Eagle here doesn't scour every crime scene, no one will. If he's not losing his job for putting his feet up on the couch directly outside the courtroom, then I don't think he's ever gonna get fired. What the fuck you doing, man? Anyway, for the purposes of being a real-life detective, Phoenix Wright will teach us way more than Detective Gumshoe. Seriously, this guy basically only ever shows up to apologize for fucking something up. By the way, I might be totally wrong about all this. If you're a lawyer in real life and you've dusted for prints and bagged evidence yourself, please blow my mind below in the comments. Ethics and legal rules and actual job definitions aside, I love the Ace Attorney games. They combine this really silly, playful vibe with some really dark shit. This looks all cutesy, but oh god, this man fell and broke his neck. Oh, this looks all goofy, but oh, this guy got shot. What happened? Oh, it's a fun TV show. Oh my god, how did that hole get in that man's chest? There's an Australian after-school kids TV show from the 90s called Round the Twist. And it was super silly, but there'd always be weird shit running underneath. And every now and again, you'd get an episode that was genuinely dark and scary. Ace Attorney gives me the same vibe. And look, I know this part of the game has nothing to do with crime scenes or being detective-y, but the way they build the courtroom drama is masterful. I love how the music cuts out when you've chosen the right piece of evidence to nail these suckers. And then the opposing lawyer starts sweating and you're like, it's also really satisfying to see witnesses lose their shit. This guy for sure spends the rest of his life in intensive psychotherapy.
It's real fucked up.
Tensions in these moments where you have to select the right piece of evidence or the correct question are really high because you can totally pick the wrong choice and get a game over and have to go hours back if you forgot to quick save. A friend told me. I definitely never experienced it myself. This is the last thing I'll say about the courtroom bit of this game because I'm going down a bit of a courtroom rabbit hole and we're here to talk about detectives, but it's amazing to me how the courts in this universe operate on a principle of guilty until proven innocent. It's the exact opposite of how it works in real life.
Well, sort of, kind of.
But Phoenix Wright, the pretend detective, is a totally different beast. I really like the way the crime scene investigation works, and as the days of the case progress, you unlock new areas that you can examine, find new pieces of evidence, interview new witnesses. It also helps that I think these games look really nice, especially given the tech they're working with. They use really simple art to create really striking imagery. The fashion sense on all these people is just...
I don't get it.
But will Ace Attorney help you be a detective in real life? I don't really know. Will it help you be a lawyer in real life? I don't really know the answer to that either. I'll just say yes. But what if you want something fucking hard? Now, Case of the Golden Idol is not hard at the start. The first case is pretty easy, but it lulls you into this false sense of security. We're like, okay, this is pretty simple. And then it gets all fucking hard. This one's a little bit of a stretch because you're not really playing a detective. Realizing looking at my game list, that's kind of a theme here actually, but we're just going to ignore that.
Okay.
You're not really playing anyone actually, more like just a cursor examining these different scenes, trying to figure out what happened. Why is this person falling off a cliff? Why is this guy on fire? It didn't stop me from rifling through his pockets.
Hey, did you just take his wallet? He just took that guy's wallet.
You essentially have to use every single clue you can find in these environments to piece together who every person in these scenes is, what they did, what role they played, and what events took place. And the clues you gather can include just about anything, from flower paintings on a wall to the amount of money in someone's pocket, the weapons they're carrying, table settings and food, drinks, comparing footprints to the shoes people are wearing, even looking at a pot tally from a card game to determine who was missing at a precise moment.
Wow, that is really hard.
This stuff is so intricate and detailed, and when you're able to actually piece it all together and figure out what happened, it's really satisfying. The other thing you might notice about this game is it's really dark. It's got this simplistic art style, but it gets grim. I do really like this game though. I mean, I was even still on board when things got really culty and weird towards the end. I don't know about you guys, but I tend to check out a bit when things head in kind of a culty direction story-wise, but this one kept me on board. And although you are essentially just looking at these static scenes and figuring out what happened, there is an overall story that winds its way through all the different cases. All the scenes and locations that you're looking at are really interesting, and you really have to pay attention to the details. I do think that if you're able to get through this game without looking at a guide, your deductive reasoning is pretty out of control. Good job you. I was not able to do that.
I'm stupid, you're smart.
It's just one of those games that has that pull where even when I was smashing my head against the wall with frustration because I couldn't figure stuff out, I just wanted to keep playing to see where this weird, wacky story was going to go, and to keep exercising my deductive muscles, which are very small. I don't really know what else to say about the Case of the Golden Idol, honestly. I just wanted to include it here because I think it's a really unique game. But what if I wanted to tell you about a game that I think is really bad? Can I be honest with you? Never mind, I can't hear. I'll just go ahead anyway. I think that from a story perspective, pretty much every Quantic Dream game sucks. They're mechanically interesting, but man, do these tales not hold up when you take even the tiniest step back and look at the whole piece. The plot, the characters, the turns and twists, the moment-to-moment beats, the stuff is all terrible.
What are we gonna do? It's pouring rain. We're gonna get soaked if we spend a day outside.
Well, at least you won't get beat. Little rain never hurt nobody. Come on, let's go play.
Great acting is sometimes revealed in the tiniest of details.
Detroit Become Human really pisses me off. You literally had the android standing at the back of the bus. Very subtle storytelling. Also, so much of this game is so boring. Having said all that, the parts where you play as a detective are super fucking awesome.
I'm shocked.
The crime scenes are packed with detail and clues to find and analyze and obsess over. And these sections are also where, in my opinion, Quantic Dream's wiggle the stick, smash the button controls that are used for boring, mundane tasks actually end up being really effective for reconstructing events, of interviewing suspects, of analyzing blood by putting it in your mouth. It's okay, he's a robot. Speaking of testing blood with your robot mouth, the android part of this game works really well as a detective because it gives you all these cool technical ways to analyze your crime scene, like scanning faces and accessing databases instantly to cross-reference stuff. Also, your partner is Mr. Krabs. It's the same actor.
What? Profits down $3 from last month. I gotta start running a tighter ship around here.
Also the same guy from Shawshank Redemption. What an awesome, crazy career. As much as I think the story in this game sucks, the relationship you have with Mr. Krabs is kind of the only one in the game that lands for me. And it felt good that they had each other's backs by the time the credits roll. I think it also helps that this game still looks fucking amazing, which greatly aids in displaying these highly detailed crime scenes. It does lead to some real grisly shit though, so heads up. When this news broadcast started towards the end of the game, I literally had to do a double take, because for a second I thought, is that real people? Detroit Become Human, this terrible game, really good detective game, I guess. The body horror section was cool as well. Speaking of body horror, let's talk about a game where the bodies are subjected to a lot of horror. And finally, a chance to talk about the real detectives of the world. The ones doing the hard work. Not the ones on the murder desk or the traffic desk. Who do you call when your ship floats back into harbor and everyone on board has suffered a seemingly horrible fate? And you need to figure out what happened to know how much money needs to get paid out. That's right, it's time to call in an insurance adjuster.
Oh, okay.
Return of the Obra Dinn is a very weird game, and one that I can only really recommend if you're the type of person that loves analyzing scenes with a microscopic level of detail. This is a notebook on your knee, jotting down every single thing that you see game. Even though you play an insurance adjuster in this game, this still really feels like a detective simulator. Anyway, this boat is really messed up. Everyone seems to have died a really horrifying death. And you, as the world's most underpaid insurance adjuster, have to inspect every nook and cranny of the vessel to figure out what happened with the help of your time-traveling pocket watch. The game gives you some basic instructions on how this all works and then just says, hey, 60 people died here. Good luck. It's pretty overwhelming at first, and I can't say that feeling ever lets up throughout the entire game. They give you this book and say, these are all the different ways that people have possibly died on here, and you go, did someone get electrocuted on this? Yes, like that. That's a pretty tame example of some of the incredibly grim shit that you'll see on your journey through this game. On a side note, after playing through Return of the Obra Dinn, I've learned that if you have a boat, please, when you're completing your insurance application, make sure you get yourself covered for Kraken attack, mermaid bite, cannon mishap, and whatever the fuck these things are.
There are some things in life that it's best to look away from.
So with the aid of your nifty magical pocket watch, you can revisit the final moments of almost everyone on board the ship. And these scenes are presented in these explorable freeze frames that look really awesome and create these moments that oscillate from sad to harrowing to downright freaky. One thing I'll say about this game is there's zero happy vibes here. This shit is so dark, so if you're going in, get prepared to come out the other side feeling really bleak. There's a lot of super graphic stuff that you'll come across. I'm pretty sure all the nightmares I've been having recently are because of these things. Having said that, Obra Dinn, we're friends, nickname basis, you know how it goes, is really special. You're not going to play another game that either looks like this or plays like this. You become intimately acquainted with every corner of this boat. It really is a character in and of itself, as much of a cliche as it sounds. You have to listen to everything everyone says. You have to look at every detail in the scene, compare people's appearances to the sketches made by the ship's artist who got squished at some point. The game does help you out by leading you to the next body once you've examined the previous one, but that's really the only favor it does for you in terms of figuring this shit out. That's why when you finally get some of these identities and their fates correct, it feels amazing.
Satisfied?
Also, when I finally figured out what this thing in the water was, I was like, holy shit.
It's a secret.
Shut up. But what really matters at the end of the day was I delivered the insurance report, and I'm not entirely sure how this would have been received by the company.
Opportunity for a career in the insurance industry provides a wonderful chance to solve unique and complex problems.
So yes, Return of the Obra Dinn will prepare you for a very rewarding career in insurance adjustment. Is that? Oh, it's a video about detective games. Fuck! It's probably only a matter of time until we're sticking wires into witnesses' heads to solve crimes and completely lose our grip on reality. More so. First things first, how the fuck is Observer over 7 years old at this point? I swear this looks better than most games coming out today. The environments are packed with so much detail. There's a trillion little photorealistic features and the lighting is bananas. To be fair, almost the entire game takes place in one apartment building. Dialing back the scope obviously allowed them to dial the detail way the hell up.
That is called a compromise.
And it's in this apartment building where you take on the role of of a grumpy old cyber detective. On the trail of both your missing son, who leaves you mysterious correspondence at the start of the game, and a nutso serial killer that is wreaking havoc by tearing people in the building to pieces and just being like a general dick, you know?
Mendoza!
There's also side cases that you can take on that tell the stories of the inhabitants of the building, which are pretty interesting. And there's lots of hacking and rifling through computers for information. And there's also this little mini game on all the computers, which I found stupidly addictive. Let's talk about searching cupboards for a sec. Does anyone else walk into a room in these games and they see there's like 1,000 drawers and cupboards to open and you get really overwhelmed? You're like, oh, which one do I open? Which one do I open first? Do I need to open all of them? Is there important shit in these cupboards? Ah! One thing Observer gets super duper right is the crime scene analysis. Your cyber implants let you approach these scenes in 3 different ways, just with your normal boring human eyes, but then you can also look at them with an organic camera and with a tech camera. You're essentially doing 3 sweeps to collect all these different types of clues and then compiling it all together to figure out what happened. The main draw of Observer though is jumping into people's minds to see their thoughts and memories. This is not only a neat way to access more information about the case you're investigating, but it leads to some really trippy imagery. I have to give Observer a lot of credit here because oftentimes in games when they try to do this trippy dream sequency sort of stuff, I feel like it doesn't land, but the writing in this game is really strong. And the way they weave your main character's personal story in amongst the memories of other people he's accessing gives you this feeling that things are starting to fall apart in your psyche.
Everybody thinks I'm crazy.
It's also visually spectacular. I'm not going to show some of the craziest stuff that you encounter in these sequences, just in case there's photosensitive individuals watching. This is one of those games where you should take the epilepsy warning at the start very fucking seriously. But rest assured, you'll see some crazy shit on your journey through people's minds in this game. And there's also a great section that I thought was a really awesome, subtle demonstration of the effects of bullying. Good shit. I ended up really liking Observer, and it also, to me, serves as a great example of what video games can do in terms of serving as these cool, like, detective simulators. I will say this bit where you have to wander around the basement sucks. The thing is, I think being a future detective would be pretty difficult. I think being a detective in the present would be really difficult. I think it would be significantly more difficult if you were dead. I think it would be even more significantly difficult if you were dead and you had to solve your own murder in order to get out of purgatory and hook up once more with your dead wife. And if you think that sounds like a stupid premise, Murdered Soul Suspect tells the story of this guy. I think his name is Ethan. I've played a lot of detective games over the last couple of months, and eventually all these grizzled detectives in fedoras start to blend together into one amorphous whiskey-drinking, chain-smoking blob. Anyway, Ethan here was a bad guy in the past, but he's now a good guy. Except he's actually now a dead guy. He lives or lived in Salem, which means this game goes down the whole witch trial rabbit hole. And there's a serial killer getting around, and while Ethan's investigating, he gets shoved through a window and then he gets shot a lot. And now you, as Ethan, have to get your ghost investigating on to figure out what happened to you and what's up with all these ritualistic murders. To the game's credit, I totally thought I knew who the killer was halfway through, and I was rolling my eyes going, that's a bit obvious, game, come on. Then it was like, fuck you, Sam, you're wrong. And then I was like, there's no need for that. And then I was having a conversation with the TV and I was like, what am I doing with my life?
Get a friend, loser.
A lot of these characters are really dumb, including Ethan. The first time you meet up with dead wifey, she says, you're in purgatory. You need to complete your life to cross to the other side. Is there anything that you can think of that is unresolved about your life? And then Ethan says, oh, I'll have a think about it and figure it out. Dude, you got murdered less than 5 minutes ago.
Why are you so stupid?
So stupid Ethan can't figure it out himself, so he needs help from this little ghost girl and this other girl who is not a ghost but can see and hear us.
I see dead people.
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
Murdered Soul Suspect gets something really right that a lot of these games get right, and that's the crime scene analysis. Heaps of clues to find, and you can unlock reconstructions of what happened. You have to figure out the motives of characters. Being a ghost comes in handy. You can possess people to view clues or use them to get past obstacles that you can't get past as a ghost. The walls in this game are very arbitrary. And you can also possess a cat. Cat Cop. I think Stray owes this game some royalties, although holy shit, these sections control badly. You also chat with a lot of ghosts that give you side missions to help them, like this guy that thinks he crashed a car and killed all his friends, but then it turns out he didn't, and it's all okay. There's collectibles all around. A lot of these collectibles give you little historical tidbits about Salem that I really enjoyed. But Sam, tell us about why the game sucks. Okay, I'll tell you. There's two main problems with Murdered Soul Suspect. Problem number one is this girl. She's fine, but the gameplay with her sucks. The second 2/3? The last 3/4. The last 3/4 to most of the game turns into a glorified escort mission. You have to get her past people by possessing objects, moving shit around to make the coast clear for her. The problem is the game doesn't really give you any indication of what you're supposed to do in this situation. So when I was in the police station here, I literally wandered around for 15 minutes trying to figure out what the fuck I was meant to do. Finally realized I was meant to disable the camera right above her head. I feel like in a lot of my videos, I talk about how I couldn't figure out a game mechanic, and then people in the comments say that bit was easy. I'm starting to think I might just be really, really stupid.
Well, I'm an idiot.
But the shittier bit are when the demons show up. You know that feeling in really good games with good combat when you walk into a room and you see enemies waiting and you think, oh, awesome, I'm about to engage with this game's fantastic combat system. This is going to be so satisfying. Murdered Soul Suspect is the exact opposite of that. When you enter a room and you see that there's demons in there, you go, what these encounters basically boil down to is you can either sneak past these demons, which is incredibly tedious and annoying. They see you, so you zip around from hiding spot to hiding spot, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until they get bored and walk away. You might get lucky, they get into a position where you can execute them, and then you run around for another 5 minutes and then get to another area with more demons and go far. So it's kind of a tale of two cities with Murdered Soul Suspect. Half of this game is pretty okay, I guess, in terms of the crime scene investigation, and the other half where you're avoiding demons and doing escort missions is fucking awful. This story also gets really wackadoo towards the end, which, look, I probably should have seen that coming considering this is about a dead detective. So I guess what I'm trying to say about Murdered Soul Suspect is that if you're ever deceased and you need to solve your own murder, this is maybe the game for you. But I also don't recommend it because it's really tedious and bad. So maybe just try to avoid that happening in the first place. But that's all super duper grim. And I also feel like this video up to this point has been kind of dark, which is inherently going to happen when you're talking about detective games or anything to do with crime. So let's finish by talking about a game that is the exact opposite. A game that is in fact so peaceful and happy that the citizens of its world don't even know what crime is. A little more cheerful, a little more colorful, a little more amphibian. I don't use this word very often, but Frog Detective is a delightful little thing. You won't be solving any murders in this one, but rest assured if you ever need to recover missing hats or find lost pies or investigate spooky ghost noises on an island that turn out just to be someone practicing for a breakdancing competition.
Stop saying odd shit.
And then this is the one for you. I do need to be honest though, most of what you do in Frog Detective is just fetch quests. You will very occasionally find some clues. This isn't much of a detective game when it comes down to it. I mainly wanted to talk about it because I just find it so charming. I'm a pretty cynical dude, but there's something about the characters and the writing in this game that totally disarmed me. Frog Detective himself is so innocent. A character tries to extort him and rather than being outraged, he's very excited. Mo the Mouse is an amazing representation of social anxiety. He's got some pretty sweet dance moves too. Lobster Cop's intro is incredible. Frog Detective is very jealous of Lobster Cop because he's #1 detective, and Frog Detective has always been #2 detective. It turns out Lobster Cop is a total fraud and has been pretending to solve cases, and so he uses his buddy Mason Mole to frame Frog Detective because he's worried he's going to catch up and overtake him as #1 detective. Mason Mole draws angry eyebrows onto this photo of Frog Detective and everyone buys it, but they don't know where to send him because they have no concept of jail, so they send him to the bad room. But when he's in the bad room, Frog Detective starts a blog. Mystery Monkey reads the blog and thinks, this is fucking outrageous, I'm gonna save Frog Detective. So Mystery Monkey goes and saves the day, gets Lobster Cop and Mason Mole in trouble, but it's all okay anyway because they end up just not being allowed to work in law enforcement. They get cushy jobs at the post office. Mystery Monkey is now best detective, obviously, because he freed Frog Detective. And because Frog Detective is awesome, he's just happy to be second best detective again. Also, LA Noire doesn't let you put stickers on your notebook, so suck it. There's one moment in this game that's super creepy. You get this mission to find ghost photos, and you're looking at all these photos, and you're like, oh, this is really cute, and then you actually see a ghost, and it's spooky as fuck. This game was also made by Australian developers, and I think that's pretty cool. And look out, world, we're bringing these graphics to your shores. There's a Tony Hawk style scooter game in here. Like, what do you want? Frog Detective is not going to teach you to be a good detective, but it's going to make you feel good and make you laugh. And at the end of the day, isn't that all that really matters? I don't want to sound lame, but this game is basically just about being nice to people and making friends, and it's cute and I like it. And I don't want to talk about this anymore. I know that I've barely scratched the surface today in terms of detective games because there's so many of them. Let me know in the comments your recommendations because I love this shit and I want to play all of them. If you work in law enforcement or if you're an actual detective, let me know which games represent it the best, which games represent it the worst. I'm genuinely curious for that feedback. What does everyone else think? What's your favorite detective game of all time? What are the ones you think are great? And most importantly, how prepared do you feel to tackle real life crime after experiencing them? I, for one, am glad to have once again had a chance to play a whole bunch of video games because they are awesome. Even the ones that aren't so awesome because people still put time and effort into making them, and that's pretty cool. Thanks, game developers, for giving us these adventures, and here's hoping that we can all learn something from Frog Detective and get along. Maybe one day, just one day, I'll finally find a hat that also fits on my massive, weirdly shaped head. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a while. Life's been pretty crazy recently. And I also chose to do a video where I had to play an absolute mountain of games. If there's any other games you'd like me to take a look at, please let me know below. If you've enjoyed what you saw today and you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing if you'd like to see more videos like this one. And speaking of that, there's a video right here that you can check out. I think you'll probably enjoy it. I hope you're very well wherever you are. My name's Sam, and I'll see you really soon.